Hi, I'm Caroline Miller, your host for Just Read It. We're a local Portland, Oregon book talk show dealing with bestsellers, and the discussions are usually with local writers who are struggling on the way up to success. But today the routine is a little different. You've been with us before. We have a prominent writer who is also a resident and a Portland, Oregon boy, and his name is Willy Vlautin, and he's written several successful novels. So welcome to the program, Willy.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to confess that normally when I read books, Willy, I like a little escape, so I usually go to London or Paris. I never stayed in Oregon before, so we're going to have fun with this and take a look at your view of life here in the Pacific Northwest. Before I do that, I'm going to read something. It's your bio, Willy, and if I've left anything out, let me know, will you? It says Willy Vlautin has been the recipient of the Oregon Book Awards, the Nevada Silver Pen Award, has been inducted to the Nevada Writers Hall of Fame, is also in the Oregon Music Hall of Fame because you're a musician, are you not?
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, I've been a musician.
What do you play, Willy? I suppose it's guitar.
I'm in a band right now called the Delines. They were based out of Portland, and then before that I was in a band for 23 years called Richmond Fontaine, and so I wrote songs for both those bands.
So you're a music writer, you don't play an instrument?
I play guitar in the bands. In Richmond Fontaine I sang and played, and I wrote the songs, and I write the majority of the songs, or a lot of the songs, for the Delines.
Well, that would follow that a writer would write the songs. Well, in any case, I interrupted myself with curiosity. Willy has written 7 novels now, because there's a new one out since this one we're talking about today. Okay, 7 novels, and your books tend to focus on the plight of the working class people. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that was I never thought I had like a great command of the English language. I'm by no means a brilliant guy, but I did know from an early age that I wanted to write like Steinbeck, write working class stories. So say my first novel was about 2 brothers in Reno called The Motel Life. They were struggling as young men to not give up, to keep trying. Northline was another book set in Nevada. And then my third book, Lean on Pete, was set in Portland. It was me, in a way, breaking up with horse racing. So it was about low-level horse racing, but also about adolescent kid in a broken family. And so many of my books tend to be about working class people and broken families, in one way, just because that's a subject I know some about.
2, no, I think 3 have been adopted for film. Is that right, Willy?
Yeah, 2 are out. They made, the first one was The Motel Life, then Lean on Pete, and then the new one, The Night Always Comes, was just filmed last summer by Netflix.
Okay, well, okay. Local boy makes good. I shouldn't call you boy, excuse me. Well, I'm so much older than you, Willy. You are a kid to me, but okay, forgive me. I'll be more respectful of your position. Now, we're going to be discussing the book, The Night Always Comes. That's the next to the latest book. And it's been out for a while, Willy, and with great reviews and great success. And so I thought there were some themes that were pretty well chewed over by the other interviewers. So I wanted to look at the book from a different angle. And one of the things you said about the book, is about optimism and, carrying on. And I read this book and I thought, I I don't see any of that. But I'm going to quote yourself on what the book, what you think about writing, and let's get into how your book fits what with this your view of the world. And you said that novels are about empathy, to live inside another's world. That's why it's a great art form, and why it's brought me so much comfort. If you find the right book, you're not alone in the world anymore. That's pretty profound, Willie, pretty profound. I'm an old philosophy major, so I was very struck by that. So in what sense did you feel the night always comes fits into the genre of your mind of what good literature should do?
I mean, I grew up, reading John Steinbeck.
Ah,
And so Steinbeck was a huge hero of mine. From say age 12 to 18, I read the majority of his major novels and was taught them in school. And I was also raised by a single mother. She raised my brother and myself, and struggled, to make ends meet, struggled with sexism, getting paid less than men. So I was always kind of aware of rich versus poor. I think I was also, kind of tuned into working class stuff because of Steinbeck and because of living with my mom. So when I started The Night Always Comes, it's more a commentary on gentrification, on greed, on capitalism, and the breakdown of the American family. And so, in that regard, it's kind of the main themes that I write about. And so you meet Lynette, her mother, and her Lynette's adult, this developmentally disabled brother, and they're trying to buy a home in Portland, Oregon, at a time when it's, housing prices were jumping at that time, sometimes 25% a year. And so I was interested in that. And I think, you drive through Portland 10 years ago, say, and you would see all the cranes downtown. Cranes meaning new buildings going up. And, one time I counted, I think 14 cranes downtown, meaning 14 new buildings going up. And so you could feel this massive explosion of growth, and you could feel the housing prices just rapidly getting out of your reach. And then, wages were stagnant. So the novel really was about that, and started out as a kind of commentary on greed and the breakdown of the American dream, which I was raised that the American dream is home ownership. That a working class person has the ability to own their own home.
Okay, I want to take the book. That's pretty standard. That's I think what most of the other people who've talked to you about have explored that theme. So I want to look at it a little differently. And I want to look at it in terms of what this paycheck to paycheck struggle does to families, does to people, and does to their sense of community and whatever kind of decency emerges. Now, for the audience, Lynette is about 30. She's got a brother who's developmentally disabled, and he's a couple of years older than she is. And then there's a single mother who was abandoned by her husband when he discovers he's the father of a disabled child. And the mother is left to work as a clerk in the store. And by the time we meet her at about 57, she's pretty beaten down. And my sense of her is she just wants to get by. She has no ambitions. It's like she's saying to life, don't hurt me, don't hurt me. But Lynette has some ambitions. She wants to buy this house that they've been renting. And so for the next day, night, and day, Lynette is disappointed that her mother kind of betrays her and says, I don't want to do this. And the mother goes off and buys a shiny car. And Lynette is thrown on her own resources to try. She's got some money, but she doesn't have good credit, right? She's right. So she's had some mental problems of her own. She's attempted suicide in that house. The mother doesn't want to mortgage those memories. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think it's been a difficult ride for the mom. I think when you meet the mother, she, like you said, she's worn out. In a person's life, you sometimes you get lucky breaks and sometimes you get bad breaks, and it's, if you don't get a lucky break once in a while, it's really hard to keep positive. And so, like so many people do, they just buy little things to make themselves feel better. Um, they they credit, they live on credit. They just kind of start giving out. And I think when you meet Lynette, she's not there yet. She's probably like her mom. She's driven. She sees this chance to live in their community. They can finally have home ownership, and her mom, and there's so much baggage between them, and so many hard miles between them, and they've kind of stuck together as a makeshift family for the brother. And I think and Lynette's saying, look, our family will fall apart, and there'll be no stability, like financial stability, if we don't try to buy this house. And I know we have hard miles, but if we can stick together, we'll be set up better for the future. Kenny will be set up for it when the mom is in retirement age. So it'll be a good thing for the family, but they'll have to sacrifice, and the sacrifices means they have to stick together. And I think Lynette, is driven by guilt, and still believes that she can save her family. And so it's kind of that struggle of these two people that shouldn't be together anymore, but are trying to stick together for the family, and for financial stability, and with housing prices the way they are, that idea is fraught with pitfalls after pitfalls, and it pushes this family to the edge.
Well, this becomes an odyssey that takes place over a short period of time, when Lynette realizes she cannot rely on her mother as the backup of this mortgage, which she requires because of her own credit being bad. And then in this saga, as I see it, Lynette makes some discoveries about her relationship with her mother, with her brother, and the people around her. The devastating thing about her mother is her mother says, at this point, I love you, Lynette, but I don't want you around anymore. I mean, I think, God, how devastating. And it echoes words of Jack, who was a former lover that Lynette was devoted to, but to get along with him, she suppressed her own self, and then she would have these periods of explosion, which he couldn't understand. And eventually he leaves her and he says, I love you, but I can't be with you. So Lynette is going through a period of discovery that, in my view, Willie, let me tell you about your book, that she did not see the world correctly. And it's a kind of odyssey. And you say she has hope, and that really stumbled me through the novel, because every thread of hope she has gets cut. But on the other hand, she's transactional too, isn't she? She steals a safe from a friend who refuses to pay a debt, and she thinks then she has to find someone to help her break it, who betrays her. And then she discovers there's cocaine and she doesn't say, oh, should I do anything with this cocaine? Shall I turn it? No, she says, I'm going to sell it. So when we look at Lynette initially, she is a projection of her environment, is she not? Or did I get that?
Yeah, I mean the you're right. The Odyssey she's on is kind of she meets greed in all these different forms. She meets old money. She meets new money, like the tech guy. She meets the old banker kind of guy. She meets the repo man who repossesses the things that people buy that they can't afford, who believes that he should pay for everything, but he's just as greedy. She meets an old boyfriend that took advantage of her when she was underage, which is a different sort of greed. So,
Absolutely.
so throughout this, and then one of her closest friends says she doesn't have the money to pay her back, and she does. So Lynette is going in an odyssey of greed, of people that care about themselves more than helping their fellow man. She, and at the same time, gets sucked up into it that the only salvation to her family is money to get enough money to get this house.
Well, let me interrupt here because just for a second,
Sure.
even her mother doesn't trust her. Her mother says to her, "You don't want this house for the family. You want this for you." Again, how blistering that is in a mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah, I mean and I understand the mother-daughter relationship. The mom is, it's a tricky relationship, and I was really interested in the mother-daughter relationship because the mom is a single mother. Kenny, the developmentally disabled son, has been hard work, and Lynette has been his caregiver since she was 10 years old. So in a weird way, Lynette's kind of an indentured servant who struggles on her own anyway. She struggles without her brother. She's not had proper love. She hasn't been able to grow up. She's had no help with her emotions. And so I think her mom has kind of used her as a servant and pushed her around out of necessity, to where the only control Lynette can ever get is anger. That's the only time she can fight back, is she gets so angry that everybody backs up and she can kind of recalibrate. But that's a very tough way to live.
It's not a successful way, and I want to pick up your point, is that she admits, and you say this about her, she lives in a box and she doesn't know how to get out of it. She doesn't have the life skills to get out of it. I think you said uh, uh, she can't think out of the box. And yet you see her as a hero because she keeps trying. And that is admirable in being a hero. But her circumstances keep her down. So this saga is about how she gets out. And at the beginning of the novel, or all the way, she gets out the way everybody else does, with some kind of using people, stealing, so forth. And then she comes to a realization, does she? So you talk about decency in the book. Where do you see Lynette's decency?
Oh, I mean, she's working two jobs. She's, is a working class person. There's no way to get a huge down payment on a house. So there's only a few ways you can do it. You can work two jobs, which she does. She ends up kind of doing part-time escorts stuff to get extra money, all because she feels guilty for abandoning her brother at times, and for having emotional problems as a kid. So, and she's gone in debt because she's paid for mental health out of her own pocket. She got credit card debt, going to a therapist to try to help herself. So to me, she's really honorable. She's just focused in that working class way, is like, not work smarter, work harder. So she just works harder and harder, and she doesn't know, and doesn't have belief in herself, to get out of that. I mean, she tries to go to community college. She's trying as hard as anyone could physically try to make more money to keep her family together. And she's willing to live with her mother, who's been very abusive to her. They have a really tough relationship to save their family home for their brother. And so I think she's really honorable. I think she gets sucked up into the night. She gets sucked up into greed like anybody else. But I think at the end, she's really kind of not giving up, and she wanted to kind of salvage her family and pay her mother back, even though her mother set her on this really treacherous childhood, treacherous adolescence. There was never enough time for, hey, let's focus on why Lynette's struggling. Lynette, the mom's boyfriend, hits on Lynette and makes her life so uncomfortable at home that she runs away. So I love Lynette. I think she's really tough and really tragic because her anger is been her savior. As far as the only way she can stand up for herself is anger. But anger, as any of us know, being around a really angry person is really scary, and you usually you build your own walls. And so she's very lonely too, and so
Bingo. And I think Lynette discovers she's lonely in a way that she didn't know before. I mean, there's no one to trust except herself. Now, the book, we're going to talk a little bit about Nora later, but the book could be extremely dark. And there's no initial indication that Lynette in 27 years, like her mother, is going to be any different.
Right.
Except Kenny. Where with the mother, Kenny is also transactional. When Lynette starts to move out of the house, she says, I'm going to take Kenny. And the mother says, go ahead, take him, which was, I thought, a 30-year-old woman wants to take on a 32-year-old mentally disabled man. That's something. And I got to thinking about that. So at the end of the book, or towards the end, the mother says, as Lynette's about to leave, no, you can't take Kenny. I realize that he brings in welfare income, so you can't take him. But Linda, and I want to talk about this because I think this is what lifts your book to really classic heights, is she says, I want to take care of Kenny. Lynette says, I want to take care of him. I'd like to have you talk about it, but for me, Kenny is the Billy Budd of the book. He is the innocent that Lynette responds to. She is capable of understanding, I can and should protect someone else. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a weird sort of way, which makes sense to me. So say from 10 years old, she's his babysitter, kind of his caregiver, his friend. So as she grows up and he grows up, she spends all her time with him, and she starts using him as a way to get out of things too, because she's stunted in her own way. She doesn't really get to go off with her girlfriends and have like a normal adolescence because she's in charge of her brother. So I think that they really lean on each other, and I think Lynette leans on him, but I think she truly loves him. I think
she loves him.
She truly does, and I think, yeah, and that's what I was trying to say at the end with the mom saying, "Hey, whoa, I can make money off this."
Yes.
So the mom's giving up. That's another way of giving up. Was like, oh, I'll figure out a way to get by, instead of like, look, Lynette, we have to work on our problems. I agree with us buying the house, because then the future of both of you and Kenny will be okay, and we'll figure this out. And they would elevate and stabilize, and it would be better. But they're so disillusioned and beat up that I think the mom gives up and just says, look, I can make some money off of Kenny. He's fine. He doesn't really care. I'll take care of him good enough. And she will. She'll be fine by him. But yeah, that was like the final nail in the family. And then so Lynette is, left to be on her own, which is been, as we've learned in the past, it's been really difficult for Lynette to be on her own without the safety of taking care of her brother. And that's why at the end of the book, she says, I'm not going to get depressed, and I'm not going to give up, and I'm not going to get bitter, and I'm not going to get cynical. I'm going to figure out how to live on my own, and then I'm going to come back and grab you.
So there you go. You see, that is the salvation of Lynette. She goes off to make her way, but she is going to save her brother. That is also important to her. And it's the, the, the spirit of compassion that transcends. And it's at that moment that I was looking for the compassion. Your earlier quote, book should open our compassion. But there is compassion in the book, in her love and her willing to sacrifice for her brother, so that you have the feeling that when she goes off, she's going to succeed where her mother didn't, because she's got this insight of giving in a way that nobody else in the book has.
Well, and I think Lynette really wants to be better. I mean, she did. She goes to therapy. She was not able to be loved when she had a boyfriend and moved in with him. She moved in with a really cool, normal guy who really loved her, and she could not. She could not be herself. She could not admit the darkness in her. She couldn't admit how difficult her life has been. She tried to act like a good girlfriend out of a movie, and you can't do that. So, right. But she learned from it, I think. So the beauty of Lynette is she might not be the smartest, but she wants to be better. She moves back to her mom's place to help her mom take care of Kenny. She wants to buy the house for them. She understands that financially, them sticking together as a unit is the best thing for her brother, and the best thing for the mom, and the best thing for Lynette. She's smart enough to know that. And she's willing to take a lot of punches to keep her family together. And where her mom is just like, what's the point? Rich guys will just keep taking from you. We're set up to fail. And so many working class families do things like that. They buy motorcycles instead of like trying to save for a house, or they just give up. And the mom gives up both. Financially, she gives up, but also physically, she quits taking care of herself.
So somnambuletic. She gets home from work, on goes the television, and I don't want to feel anything. But I do think the role of love in this book is really important. Lynette's desires for herself are one thing, and they can be easily disappointed. But you take on the obligation for another human being, and that changes you. And I think that's where compassion lies in your book. And you called your writing more, and maybe we can now travel into that a little bit. It's noir, but it's noir with hope. I find it such an interesting combination. I noticed that you read one of the interviewers said, "Who would you like to have lunch with?" And one of the people you mentioned was Flannery O'Connor. And I wrote about Flannery before she was really, really famous. I think A Good Man is Hard to Find was her seminal piece.
Yep.
And anyway, Flannery is more. Flannery has no belief in human beings. A Good Man is Hard to Find. The central character makes his place in a chaotic world, the same as Lynette, by doing evil, because he has now decided that really evil is God's invention. So he'll balance it out. He'll balance out the good. Now that is more. That is more.
She's very goth. I mean, The Night Always Comes. I wanted it to be fast paced like a noir. and the darkness of a noir of a working class person in over their head, on an odyssey of greed and 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 debauchery of capitalism, really. So in that regard, it was really important for me to make The Night Always Come feel like a noir, and I wanted the speed of it. I always thought of like in Portland when, and I don't know if this makes sense, but when you're walking down the street, say in St. John's neighborhood, which is kind of my favorite neighborhood, and all of a sudden everyone around you is driving a Mercedes, but you're still walking, and you're like, are all these people affording these things when I can't afford these things? How am I going to buy? How are all these people buying houses when the prices keep going up, and that kind of panic of whatever's happening in the economy is passing me by, and I don't know what to do. It seems like everybody's figured it out, but me. I wanted that kind of panic to be in it. Um, but to segue to Flannery O'Connor, I mean, she's been a big hero of mine for most of my life. I mean, I think stylistically, she's a genius. She writes with such a wicked heart, and such a beauty, where I think I'm really drawn to her stylistic, that kind of gothic way of writing. But I think for me, I care more about the hope of humanity, of people with a few dents in them trying to get by. I think I tend to gravitate towards that as a writer because I'm trying to do that in my personal life, which is to try to hang on and stay positive. I'm trying to be like Lynette. I don't want to give up or get too cynical, and it's a razor thin, if I'm going to make it that way. Sometimes where I think Flannery O'Connor was, a genius, one of America's greats, and her twisted sense of humanity and her exploration of religion. I just can't, I can't say anything, but I worship her, and sometimes I'll stay away from her books because there are certain writers that make you want to write, and there's certain writers that are so good that you just quit. And I never write. After I read a book of hers, I always kind of think, maybe I should go back to house painting.
No, because you have done something. You surprised me, Willie, because my first reading through the book it was a good book. It was a good read. It was a page turner. But I just kept dealing about, well, what is it that makes Lynette keep going, and where does that nobility of soul come from? And for me, I have settled that it is love. So you have created maybe a new genre, which is noir that is hopeful. Did you ever think about that?
I never have. I think of Lynette as like majority of us come out swinging pretty hard, trying to do something, and some people get easily discouraged. Some people get waylaid by various reasons. Some people keep trying, and I think Lynette's pretty savvy, and really is. I wrote her as like a commentary too, of like to save the American family in that way I was raised, which is home ownership and having a voice. And I always admired her for that, and think she's really cool. She's not a saint by any means, and she makes a lot of bad moves, but she's also a very damaged person. But all you can do as a human is, if you are damaged by your childhood or damaged by a relationship, is to try to fit your obligation is to try to fix yourself, both for yourself, but for the people you're around. Um, and I think she's, in her own way, is a hero because she realizes who she is, and
You
she tries to.
let it slip, Willie. You've let it slip, your own point of view. You improve it for yourself and for the people you are around. Now, that
Yes.
is the ultimate community.
Yes.
Yes. And that lifts her from a girl who's struggling to a girl who is noble.
I think so.
Yeah. So I commend you. You you really tripped me up, and I thought, Yowie, and congratulations. It's a wonderful book, and I want to only have about 4 minutes here. I haven't read your new book, but I will, The Horse, because I'm totally humbled and respected by your artistic trickery that took me completely in. I do think you've invented a new genre. Um, Tell us a little bit about Horse. The Horse?
The Horse. Yeah. I mean, I was interested, I've been in bands since I was 13 or 14. And most of the guys I grew up playing with are still playing in some regard. And, none of them have really made a living at it. Um, uh, but they've never quit. And so I started thinking about, I've never written about music or art, but I started thinking, why do I keep writing songs? Why do guys keep writing books that they never send out, or why do they keep writing books that never get published, or why do guys continue to write songs and they're not even in bands anymore, like or paint or what keeps a person going. And so I wrote about the life of a journeyman musician based out of Reno, a casino musician who started in 1965 at 18 playing casinos, and I just followed his entire life as a musician. And yeah, it's just kind of the study of art, why a guy does art.
Well, again, you're touching on a point. I'll be interested in seeing how you solve it. What is the nature of the human spirit? That's really something that art does consider, and the reader can appreciate, because what you tell us then broadens our world, which brings us back full circle that writing is compassion.
Well, yeah, if you can find, yeah, because if you, well, like if you, I've always loved working class stories, and so if a rich white collar guy reads about a maid in a Motel 6, say, maybe not that he would ever stay there, but if he did, maybe he would be kinder to her. Maybe you'd understand, like she's not a less of a human being. She's just as important as me. She's just as important as a rich person. So be decent to her. And I think the novel can really do that. You might not like the maid. You might not like Lynette. But hopefully you understand, this is how people get the way they are, and this is that they have souls too, and they have desires that are just as important as the rich guys. So I've always wanted to write working class fiction for that reason too.
Well, in this day of oligarchs, may I say, it's a message that needs to get out. We're all human. I think you got it out beautifully in the night.
Yeah, throughout time, relying on rich people to take care of working class people is never worked. I never understand why we keep thinking rich people are going to save poor people, because rich people, they have other things. They have other things on their agenda than caring about the working class. But I don't know.
But basically, we're all human, and we all have, like the net, the capacity for greatness. Willy, this has been so much fun. I really was so glad that you were able to fit us into your schedule, because once I got the hang of what you were doing, I thought, oh, heck, this is good. Anyway, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And I want to say to my audience, we do this about every 2 months. So I hope you will subscribe, because we've got more talk and brilliant artists like this, and some up and coming. And I hope you've enjoyed this interview with Willy as much as I have. Until next time, and again, thank you, Willy. Caroline Miller for Just Read It.